そんなもんか。
弟を倒したサイヤ人の力とはその程度か。俺は弟のように甘くはない。愚か者。
Dragon Ball has a massive roster of villains you can talk about that have impacted the franchise in some way. Frieza is perhaps the most recognizable antagonist to come out of the series, yet despite his mass popularity, he is unironically rivaled by a close relative not even introduced within the original run of the Dragon Ball manga. That being is none other than his older brother, the supposed strongest being in the universe, Lord Cooler. Cooler's presence and dominance are one of his many appeals that could rival even Broly's popularity. Despite his history within the series, several misconceptions surround his powers. That is why we are exploring all of Cooler's list of accomplishments and figuring out exactly how strong he is. You can consider this a what-if composite Cooler, but I will separate each distinct version of his character. Before we can even talk about what happens within the films, it's relevant to establish how one determines a character's prowess like Cooler. Many people like to believe that you can compare his power to what is shown in the Toei anime since it is supposedly canon to the anime continuity. The Daizenshu tries to establish that the films could take place in correlation to the anime. However, the guys acknowledge that their logic doesn't make sense. Movie 5 supposedly takes place during the 3 years of training for the androids, while Movie 6 takes place during the 10 days of prep for the Cell games. However, you then get Movie 7, which occurs in an entirely different reality since the androids are supposedly defeated. Later, Movie 8 takes place during the 10 days of prep for the Cell games, but also questions why Goku and friends are calm and not concerned about Perfect Cell, theorizing that the Cell games didn't occur. Yet you then have Movie 9 that outright references Perfect Cell. You also have the earlier films show the Z Fighters alive despite the fact they should be dead around the time where they occur within the anime continuity. Takao Koyama, the writer of the original 13 films, has admitted that trying to establish any consistency for the films is impossible. Although he did say when scripting the films his mindset at the time was to write based on the anime continuity, he has conceded that there is a time delay within the movie continuity. Since certain concepts or plot points have yet to occur, each film tries to predict what will happen before the next episode of the anime is broadcasted. In Cooler's case, his first film was released after the anime episode where the Z Fighters summoned Shenron to revive the Namekians while Goku and Frieza continue to fight. As for the manga, Goku returned to Earth right after Future Trunks defeated Mecha Frieza. Then for Cooler's second film, Vegeta arrives to save Goku and faces the androids within the anime. In the manga, Piccolo continues his fight with Imperfect Cell. Hence why Koyama could predict Dende becoming the new Guardian of the Earth due to Piccolo's fusion, but not Gohan's training within the hyperbolic time chamber, or Vegeta achieving higher grade forms of Super Saiyan. Secondly, Koyama mentions that despite being the writer and therefore the highest authority for these films, places Toriyama's opinion above his own, but has said during production that Toriyama did not have any input towards the story. People try to debunk the idea that Toriyama's views on the films matter since he didn't assist on making the films, but Koyama disagrees with this notion. Toriyama doesn't debunk either sources, as stated in an interview that the films occur in different dimensions. Then he says the staff that wrote the Daizenshu know more than he does and how those guys would have made his story better if he had access to them while making the manga. Therefore, the validity of the guidebook's author and scriptwriter are consistent and likewise valid. We also cannot use power levels either. The main issue with power levels is that the movies have their numbers for characters that contradict both manga and anime. As an example, despite Frieza's first form being 530,000, the guides give the movie version of Frieza a power level of 95,000. It gets even more awkward since Cooler's armored squadron, Salsa, Nez, and Dora are all given official power levels higher than Frieza, especially when manga Kid Goku with a power level of 10 is strong enough to shatter a boulder with his bare hands or durable enough to withstand bullets is weaker than the movie version Bulma. Long story short, we cannot scale Cooler to the manga or anime continuity, nor can we compare him to the previous movie villains like Turles or Lord Slug. We can only use what is in the film since it's canon canon to its continuity. Now that we resolved those misconceptions, let's figure out how strong Cooler is. Before he even appears, we see some context of his power thanks to his brother. At the beginning of the film, it is shown that the events of the Toei Bardock special do occur within the Cooler films, where we see First Form Frieza destroy Planet Vegeta. I happen to have a video that breaks down this feat you can check out. In the video, we concluded that Lowball destroying a planet 10 times Earth's gravity would require dwarf star level of attack potency. Even though I did say we can't use manga or anime scaling, this feat is valid to use for Cooler's continuity. If we were accurate about the calc, highball this feat would be large star level, since a planet would need to be massive to withstand its gravitational pull or crumble on itself. This feat is why using parallels for Cooler scaling is weird, due to the movie 5 Frieza being strangely inferior to his brother's men. Although who knows, maybe they could low-key throw hands against anime Goku. Jokes aside, it's vague whether 4th form Cooler compares to his brother's final form or not. If you want to rely on parallels because Cooler's men are stronger than movie 5 Frieza that can destroy Planet Vegeta and Cooler scales above his soldiers, then his 4th form does indeed scale above Frieza's power. Plus, the film's original title is translated as the strongest versus strongest. Otherwise, we know that Master Roshi mentioned that Goku got stronger since he returned from planet Namek. Then Cooler was able to damage the stronger Goku, but only due to having to protect Gohan, yet surviving his attack was enough proof for him to believe he defeated Frieza. Later, Cooler outclasses Goku using his 5th form, which can be a multiplier. You see, Goku is shown using Kaioken against him and would get speed blitzed several times by Cooler, even being unfazed by a Kaioken amped Kamehameha blast. Downplay, we can still say Goku was only using the base 2 times multiplier of Kaioken, so 5th form Cooler able to tank his attacks head on would mean he would have to be at least 1.2 through 2 times stronger than him. Though it wouldn't be inconsistent to assume Goku was using Kaioken times 20 either, so in actuality, Cooler's 5th form would be more than 20 times, probably even a 40 times multiplier onto his 4th form. That's because Goku gains a 50 times boost thanks to his grade 1 Super Saiyan, of which can damage and speed blitz Cooler, also taking his attacks with 0 issues, showing that Cooler's 5th form being able to outclass his highest Kaioken multiplier but not his Super Saiyan form is consistent. Only Cooler's Supernova gave Goku trouble, but he eventually pushes it back and wins. It's worth noting that Cooler's final form can destroy Earth, though labeling Cooler's max attack potency only planet level is terrible downplay if his brother can perform a better feat in his 1st form. Considering that Cooler conquers several worlds like it's nothing, and within Battle Z states that Earth is very tiny, which King Cold in the manga mentions something similar. One final thing many people overlooked was that Goku's Kamehameha was able to send Cooler and his Supernova to the sun in around a minute, which can correlate to his combat speed. The closest Earth is to the Sun nearly reaches 90 million miles, or almost 145 billion meters. The furthest it has been is about 95 million miles, or over 150 billion meters. So even if we downplay this feat and assume Goku's attack took 10 minutes to reach the Sun, it clocks at relativistic plus level of speed. Of course, if we're accurate with the time it took to hit the Sun, Goku's attack would be around 8 times mid-ball to 20 times the speed of light highball, essentially reaching FTL level of combat speed. This would be Cooler's end until his revival thanks to the Big Getty Star. While his remains have merged with the chip that created the Big Getty Star, his more recognizable form is his clone army of Meta Coolers. Compared to his 5th form, his newest metallic clone outclasses his original self. According to Daizenshu 7, his bio states that his power rivals that of a Super Saiyan, which is accurate given that in his previous encounter with Goku, he casually handles Goku's base form and Kaioken state with little difficulty. Even when Goku goes Super Saiyan again, Meta Cooler was able to handle a stronger variant of Goku compared to their previous encounter. He did get caught off guard by base Vegeta, but we see how even with Vegeta's assistance, Meta Cooler was able to handle 2 Super Saiyans, so really the Daizenshu somewhat downplays his level of power a bit. What is Meta Cooler's most impressive feat is his speed. Meta Cooler can use instant transmission, which we don't know how he learns it, he just has it, and despite Goku also using the same technique, Meta Cooler was able to catch and grab Goku out of mid-teleportation. For more context, according to the guidebooks, when a person uses instant transmission, they travel through the teleportation zone. Through this zone, they can travel anywhere at infinite speed so long as they have an energy signature to focus on. This meta cooler outdid Goku's infinite combat speed. Add that with his regeneration and Zenkai's, meta cooler is a powerful threat. Though then again, he did screw up hard at the end of his second film. Now while we could stop here, there are several other appearances Cooler makes that need to be brought up. As if his scaling wasn't already convoluted, it's only about to get crazy. The first one I need to address is his appearance within GT. Cooler makes a quick cameo during the Super 17 arc where all the villains within Hell arrive on Earth. Fans like to use this as proof that the films connect to GT. The problem is that for one, you can't even prove it's the same Cooler to begin with, since by that logic, the Goku from GT must be the same Goku from Super, when clearly both series are different continuities and therefore have two distinct yet similar characters. Plus, Koyama himself said he is not involved with the production of GT several times. Any movie characters added in is just an Easter egg and nothing else. Regardless, given that he appears for a brief shot, there's nothing else worth talking about this version of Cooler. Following that, let's kick off his gaming appearances, starting with his first game, Dragon Ball Z3 Revengeance Ningen, translated as a violent battle of artificial humans. This game recreates Movie 5 events which occurred before the Android Saga. There is only one slight difference that needs to be mentioned. Once you fight Cooler, a cutscene appears where Vegeta arrives on the scene and transforms into a Super Saiyan. It's not until you damage Cooler just enough that he eventually transforms into his final form. Although he loses in the end, so it's questionable if he was that strong to handle both Saiyans and Sea Fighters. Cooler would follow up on this game with his more recognizable appearance within the story planned to eradicate the Saiyans. Written as an original game exclusive story, later reanimated for Raging Blast 2, it tells the story of Dr. Raichi, a Tuffle wanting to have his revenge against the Saiyans by summoning ghost warriors of previous enemies. This indicates that some movie events occur within this continuity and that this game supposedly occurs before the Cell games. This ghost Cooler within the original animation was able to throw hands against a full-powered Super Saiyan Goku, but ultimately gets overpowered. Raging Blast 2 version, the ghost warriors were able to overpower the Z Fighters due to some gas weakening their ki, but after Bulma arrives to the system, the Ghost Warriors are defeated. In the original, however, Goku recognizes them as Ghost and Winch, which is very anticlimactic. There's also a weaker enemy called Soul Cooler that appears in-game the player can face, but aren't part of the story other than just being another enemy that Dr. Raichi has summoned as his goons. Much like GT, fans consider this story as another source to prove the movies are all connected. However, Takao Koyama clarifies that the game continuity is separate from the movie continuity, meaning that this game would also have its unique scaling. Before someone tries to argue against this, mind you that Koyama wrote the original game story. The next game to include him with alternate events to his films is Legacy of Goku 2, where Cooler appears on Earth just before the 3 years of training to face the androids, where he tells either Gohan or Piccolo that he wants to challenge Goku on New Namek. Gameplay wise, you don't get to unlock Goku until you must collect the Dragon Balls right before the Cell games occur. Cooler doesn't need to be defeated by Goku, as you can beat him with any character, potentially placing him to a similar level as the androids or Cell if typed up. Succeeding this game is Budokai 3, where Cooler appears as a secret boss during the Namek Saga that the player can challenge during their second playthrough as certain characters if they want to. This game makes Goku once again state that his power outclasses even Frieza. Another interesting fact is that there is a guide that gives Cooler in his final form a power level of 470 million. However, as stated prior, due to different continuities, this doesn't correlate to anime or manga power levels, especially when Budokai 3 and future titles establish that there is an infinite multiverse. If someone wanted to steelman the idea that it somehow can correlate to anime scaling, then Cooler would automatically be more than 3 times stronger than Namek Saga Super Saiyan 1 Goku with a power level of 150 million. From then on, Cooler does appear more often like the Tenkaichi series, Raging Blast 2, Dokkan Battle, and Fighter Z, but it's mostly recreating the events of the movie or just having him be a playable character so we can skip those titles. It's not until Super Sonic Warriors 2 that his true powers gets to shine. In this game, every character has a story mode that retells every arc but from their perspective. However, this game adds some exclusive what-if scenarios that could have occurred, and Cooler is given 2 unique events. Initially, it recreates his movies, but his first what-if scenario immediately doesn't play around. This time teams up with Mecha Frieza and invades Earth. The first branching event depicts Cooler defeating and killing off all the Z Fighters. We then get a 10-year time skip of Gohan growing up and training along with Trunks, where they try to stop Cooler, but they still lose regardless. So after defeating everyone, Mecha Frieza, realizing that the dev team gave him an unnecessary buff, challenges his brother for control over the universe, but also meets his demise. Then, as for his second branching event, we see how after Cooler's defeat, he discovers the Big Daddy Star and becomes Meta Cooler. Meta Cooler destroys everyone on his own despite their growth. It gets crazy because after the Z Fighters defeat, Dr. Gero unleashes his androids and faces Meta Cooler, which is some fanfic energy. Meta Cooler defeats them, and because they were incapacitated, Imperfect Cell absorbs them and obtains his perfect form. Despite this massive power-up, Meta Cooler challenges him and successfully defeats him, and then recruiting the Ginyu Force, literally taking Frieza's entourage for himself. After this game, Shin Budokai's where Cooler's lore gets ridiculous. The first installment tells an alternate storyline that is heavily based on the events of the Fusion Reborn movie, occurring years after Kid Buu's defeat. Much like movie 12, Janemba appears and distorts all of reality, to the point that past villains return and cause time distortions that pull Teen Gohan and future Trunks from their universe. Broly and Cooler return from the dead, trying to collect the Dragon Balls and killing off their enemies. Since Janemba's negative energy is spreading across the world, villains such as Frieza and Cooler become stronger due to their evil nature being imbued by Janemba's essence. As a result, Cooler could hold his own against post-Buu Saga Super Saiyan 1 Vegeta and impressively nearly killed off Pikkon, who as a reminder is an anime-exclusive character that could defeat Super Perfect Cell according to some guides. In this continuity, however, Pikkon was only shown to defeat Super Saiyan 1 Gotenks because he lacks combat skills and could hold his own against base Vegeta, but did lose to a post Zenkai with negative energy amped Perfect Cell. Eventually, it took the power of Ultimate Gohan to kill off Cooler. However, we don't know how strong Cooler is without the negative energy amp, so it's questionable to say objectively that Shin Budokai Cooler is somehow at Perfect Cell level consistently. Years later, a sequel titled Shin Budokai Another Road continues this continuity, and Cooler's returns once again, but not exactly. Sometime after the defeat of Janemba, Future Trunks returns to the present and asks for the Z Fighters' assistance in defeating Future Majin Buu and Future Babidi. Due to Trunks screwing up, Future Babidi is informed of the existence of Dragon Balls located on New Namek. Not only do Future Babidi and the Z Fighters arrive on New Namek, but so do Future Broly and somehow Future Cooler with his Meta Cooler army. I'm not joking. Somehow, Future Cooler discovers the Big Yeti Star and creates his clone army while being completely alive and well, wanting to locate the Namekian Dragon Balls. Sadly, his role gets shafted as we soon discover Babidi mind controls Cooler and Broly to defeat the heroes and locate the Dragon Balls. Eventually, the villains get defeated, but soon return to Earth to cause more mayhem. Despite that, Future Super Buu is born and absorbs both Future Broly and Future Cooler twice. He doesn't appear again afterward, so it's another disappointing defeat for Cooler. Though I do like to point out that one of the bad endings shows Cooler successfully collecting the Dragon Balls, kills off the Z Fighters, and wishes for infinite energy for the Big Yeti Star. I'm just saying, but given the whole multiversal lore nonsense, technically this ending did happen one way or another in some random timeline, so it's kinda canon. But it's still cool to note that theoretically, present Cooler could still have retained his body, but find the Big Yeti Star on his own. The next two games Cooler appears in are brief, so we'll quickly talk about them. Within Extreme Butoden, the plot uses similar concepts to that of Shin Budokai. Taking place years after GT, instead of Janemba, is Omega Shenron that appears once again, distorting time and space, reviving villains, with Goku needing the Dragon Balls and figuring out how to obtain Super Saiyan God to defeat Omega. While locating one of the Dragon Balls, Goku finds and defeats Frieza, where he re-emerges as Mecha Frieza. Much like with Super Sonic Warriors 2, Cooler appears and assists his brother in defeating Goku, but this time Goku defeats them on his own. Frantic gameplay wise, you don't fight Cooler, as he appears merely as a supporting character, but in the end he gets killed off. So huzzah to those GT fans who want to know what would have happened had GT Goku faced Cooler based on that Easter egg. There you go, a game that delivers the obvious outcome. As for Dragon Ball Fusions, Cooler appears briefly for the Time-Space Rift tournament, but he merely shows up to align with the protagonist, and later you can face his meta clones. That said, he can fuse with Frieza via X fusion, becoming Cooliza. So if you ever wanted to see your hypothetical fusion between the two, congrats, your fan-made fusion is canon. Following the multiversal event trope, the next appearance Cooler makes is Dragon Ball Legends. Much like Dragon Ball Fusions, the events are based around another multiversal tournament known as the Tournament of Time, which takes several warriors from different eras of Dragon Ball to participate. By the time Cooler appears within the story, the protagonist Shallot, an amnesiac ancient Saiyan, is participating in the Super Cell games and plans on defeating Perfect Cell. Before he fights Cell, Shallot can rival the androids from the present timeline, getting Zenkais and has 5 days of prep for the Super Cell games, training to achieve Grade 4 Super Saiyan and eventually Super Saiyan 2. Shallot admits that at the time, characters like Deborah, an alternate genetically enhanced semi-perfect Cell, and Android 16, full-powered Super Saiyan Goku, and Super Saiyan 2 Teen Gohan were too much for his current level. This same Shallot struggled against final form Cooler. Only with Bardock's assistance and getting stronger as they battle can they overpower Cooler. But he survived thanks to Celsa's aid. When he returns, Shallot obtains Super Saiyan 2 and overwhelms Cooler on his own, showing that Legends Cooler is potentially around the level of semi-perfect Cell, but not Perfect Cell. Even Bardock notes that when Perfect Cell kills off Cooler, he is impressed that Cell could kill someone as strong as Cooler with little effort despite being weakened from fighting Shallot. Cooler does come back for a brief moment, now with a Dark Key amp, but gets eradicated by a Super Saiyan God tier character. Kinda unfair for Cooler to show up briefly only to get destroyed in 5 seconds. It's worth noting that Legends includes characters during the Super era like Kaba and Frost, who should be well beyond the levels of DBZ era if they were accurate to their anime or manga counterparts, but are nerfed within this continuity. Plus, Shallot struggles with Perfect Cell but not Cell Juniors, despite guides saying that they are potentially equal to Perfect Cell, but Legends Cell implied that they aren't, calling them mere toys at best. So Cooler scaling is debatable in this game despite the game's attempt to connect to each supposed era scaling, questionably manga or anime continuity. Finally, we reach the peak of Cooler's ultimate power, and that is the insane fan fiction of Dragon Ball Heroes and Xenoverse. Both series revolve around Chronoma, the supreme Kai of Time, aiding chosen fighters known as Time Patrollers. Their goal is to fix time distortions across the infinite multiverse to maintain stability within the Time Nest. The Time Nest itself can contain an infinite number of timelines, making it a high 4D construct at least, which will be important to note later. Cooler would appear in Xenoverse 2 thanks to these time distortions. He first appears when Frieza faces Super Saiyan Goku during the Namek Saga. Both Frieza and Cooler get stronger through their villainous mode amp. It took both the player's avatar along with Goku to defeat the brothers. He appears again during the Cell games through another time distortion, but as his Meta Cooler army. According to the mission title, Meta Cooler is given a power level of 10 billion. It's debatable as to whether this is basing it on the total army power level or a single Meta Cooler. Plus, this might be a reference to his original movie title translated as 10 billion powerful warriors, which is a reference to his army. Also, it's vague how this power level would correlate to Xenoverse scaling anyways. Meta Cooler appears one last time during the resurrection of F Saga, assisting Golden Frieza and gaining his supervillain form power-up. Very creative names, I know. Then perhaps one of his Chad moments is near the end of the game. The player can select certain characters as their instructor to learn unique abilities, and Cooler can be one of those masters. The player and Cooler are sent across several time distortions where Cooler was shown to handle the likes of Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta, the androids, Perfect Cell, Buhan, Rose Goku Black, Jiren, and many more. Keeping up with the player's avatar and stronger villains is no joke. The same avatar prior can defeat a demon named Mira in his transformed state that could have potentially wiped out the entire multiverse. Within his base form, he already surpasses time itself. The player can also defeat Demigra, who in the first game within his transformed state, simply fighting the previous avatar could have collapsed the crack of time, a realm located outside the infinite 4D time nest, meaning this specific Cooler could have low-key scaled to the avatar who has beyond infinite infinite 4D powers, which isn't inconsistent if he can handle super era characters easily. But I do like to point out that during his extra missions, you can train with Cooler so that he can become stronger, to the point he somehow achieves his meta form without the usage of the Big Getty Star. Don't ask how that makes sense, as I just presumed this would be an outlier compared to the rest of Meta Cooler's lore. Dragon Ball Heroes would follow up the success of Xenoverse by adapting its storyline via anime, manga, and the actual arcade game. We see Cooler first appearing during the Prison Planet arc, freeing future Trunks and teaming up to find the Dragon Balls to escape said planet. He casually takes out Hero's version Bojack by a surprise beam attack and later faces off against a Berserk, Super Saiyan 2 Goku, and Cumber. This is where we are introduced to the infamous Golden Cooler. Through this form, he can defeat this Berserk Goku in the anime, while in the manga, he did experience some difficulty, but still an impressive feat. For added context, this Capsule Corp Goku comes from a timeline after the Tournament of Power arc and was capable of equally matching Super Saiyan 4 Xeno Goku in his blue form. This same Xeno Goku was capable of defeating Demigra in his transcendent state, which is stronger than his previous monster form. Demigra's newest power was stated by promotional materials and games that he has the power to destroy the entire Dragon Ball verse and the real world. Not like the so-called fictional Dragon Ball real world, but the actual real-life universe. So Demigra with a stronger form capable of destroying an infinite 4D time nest, the Crack of Time realm, and the real-life universe would easily place him as a 5th dimensional being, if not higher. Xeno Goku can defeat this being in his base form, if not his Super Saiyan 1 form, and Capsule Corp Goku can relatively rival such power, who Cooler just beat the monkey out of him. Afterward, Cooler in the manga faces off against Ghost Warriors and bodies Bojack again, and Perfect Cell on some Black Frieza energy. He kills his father as well to add more to his kill count. Cooler tries his best to face off against the evil Saiyan Cumber, but is unable to do anything. It's not until the next arc that he shows his peak power. He obtains his Metal Cooler form off screen and combines it with his golden form, now known as Golden Meta Cooler. Through this, he single-handedly defeats Cumber. For further context, neither Capsule Corp Goku nor Xeno Goku on their own could beat Cumber, to the point that both characters perform their Potara fusions, and even as Blue Kaioken Vegito or Super Saiyan 4 Xeno Vegito, whether it's the anime or manga, both fusion characters fail to put Cumber down for good. This was all being done by base Cumber, let alone going into Super Saiyan 3 full power or his Golden Grade 8 form. Only thanks to Mastered Ultra Instinct Capsule Corp Goku would he be defeated. Meta Cooler was able to defeat a possibly stronger Cumber. The fact that characters who were well above multiversal level and base, whom possessed several transformations and then stacked the Potara multiplier on top of that, and they would barely rival a base Saiyan, you realize how insane the scaling chain gets if Cooler can outclass all the multipliers of Fusion, all Saiyan transformations, and Cumber's own power to defeat said enemy. Now granted, in the manga version, Cumber was heavily exhausted prior and lost, but the anime version gave no such indication. He appears briefly afterward, facing off against Goku and Hearts, now with a Dark Dragon Ball to amp up his power, but is later defeated, and then he makes another brief appearance during another tournament, the Super Space Time tournament, and the most that happens as of this video's release is Cooler nearly killing off Yamcha in the manga. I don't know how to transition this properly, but I know someone might bring this up. Yes, Cooler does appear in Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission and the Ultimate Mission games. Within the Ultimate Mission games, one minor change is that Goku uses a Spirit Bomb to kill off Cooler instead of Super Saiyan, which is an interesting what-if scenario. As for World Mission, he briefly faces Great Saiyan Man 3, who is Xeno Trunks in disguise, and loses quickly. He makes another appearance where Mecha Frieza arrives on Earth just like in the manga, but this time the entire Frieza family appears. Cooler obtains his golden form due to timey-wimey anomalies, but is ultimately defeated again. The player can also face off against his Meta Cooler army
army and his remnant core body, but loses as well. Anyways, that is the entire compilation of Cooler's list of accomplishments and I guess failures. In conclusion, to sum up his prowess, movie Cooler would be at least planet level extremely downplayed, consistently dwarf star level mid-ball, and highballed potentially reaching large star level. This would apply to his final form and his clone army of Metacoolers as well, but obviously be higher by a big margin. Likewise, both would reach FTL combat speed and for Metacooler specifically, infinite speed. When it comes to his video game counterparts, it varies across the board. If you composite everything together, he ranges from being above final form 100% Frieza to highballed above Super Perfect Cell, which would naturally place him anywhere from end of Frieza saga, the Android saga, to end of Cell Game saga. Now, this range intentionally disregards Xenoverse and hero scaling. When referring to said two series, he is already Multiversal Plus or Infinite 4D in power bare minimum. While highballed, he reaches high complex multiversal level, which can have a subjective definition, but essentially reach no more than 12th dimensional. Since I didn't take in consideration the rest of Dragon Ball cosmology other than the timeness, and also the rest of Hero's canonicity lore, Cooler's dimensional scaling would be bumped up higher, but would otherwise consistently fit within that range. As for speed, much like the movies, game version Cooler would also naturally reach beyond FTL speeds, if not infinite speed as their default stat, given their already crazy dimensional scaling. I would argue that he would probably have immeasurable speed if he can possibly scale to Xenoverse counterparts, who are known to have immeasurable speed in the arcade game. Game scaling requires some speculation regarding destructive capacity, hence why I labeled Cooler's placement as open-ended. I didn't include all the external power-ups he receives onto his base stats like his villainous mode, super villain mode, dark key, or dark Dragon Ball amp, so if those are included, then naturally he'll become faster and stronger, along with all the additional hexes he may receive with said amps. As I must repeat this one more time, due to different continuities and therefore different scaling, I won't say this is objectively Cooler scaling, but given how the games portray his power in correlation to every other villain, I'd say our conclusion for his range of power is consistent. Regardless, I like to see what everyone thinks as to how Cooler compares to that of the androids or other fictional characters. We will have to wait and see what the future has in store for Cooler. Who knows, maybe he'll someday obtain his Black Cooler form, or maybe even a Black Meta Cooler form, but surely that will never ever happen. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.